All right. I'd like to welcome everybody here today. I'm so excited to be here with Dr. Veronica Richard to talk about AI in qualitative research. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Veronica Richard, Ph.D. She is a pivotal figure at Dissertation by Design and the Dissertation Coach. With a distinguished academic background and extensive experience, Dr. Richards serves as a dedicated consultant, guiding doctoral candidates through the rigorous process of completing their dissertation. Dr. Richard is a recognized expert in qualitative research strategies and discussions surrounding the ethical and practical integration of artificial intelligence, specifically large language models, into academic research. She has led workshops and presented research on how AI can augment qualitative research processes, from refining interview protocols to analysis and writing. Her expertise is instrumental in helping students navigate complex research methodologies, manage data effectively using tools like in vivo, and ultimately achieve their academic goals. All right.
Thanks so much, Carlene.
Yes.
I'm like, wow.
She sounds great.
Yeah, who's that person? Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm super happy to be with you today. And this is Dr. Carlene Brown. Um, and you will know Dr. Brown from her extensive work moderating this group. She does such a fantastic job. Dr. Brown is a mixed methods researcher who has an interest in researching how AI can be used as a research tool. And I know that as the tools become more and more refined, we'll just be keep having these conversations, hopefully, so that we can stay not only up to date, but continually questioning ourselves. And I think Carlene and I were talking about that, how we need to be in charge as we go forward. But Carlene's expertise is rooted not only in her professional research, but also her foundational doctoral work. I am going to put a link in here to her research there. And then this, her work is specifically explored how the dynamic intersection of AI and qualitative research and examining how these tools can be helpful in to researchers while navigating the essential ethical concerns. Um, Dr. Brown has given multiple research presentations and webinars on this topic, and today we'll draw upon her experience to provide novel insights into leveraging AI effectively and responsibly in qualitative studies. All right.
Well, I think we could just both start by describing some of our direct background related to AI support and qualitative research, and we've done a little bit of that, but I'll let you go ahead and talk about your work with AI.
Okay, sure. I before we go on, I do want to acknowledge Dr. Morgan's in the room.
Yes, yes,
Thank you so
welcome.
much for being here today. If you have any ideas that you want to add to what we're talking about, please do so. Um, so I guess my work started, let's see, what year are we in? It seems like time is flying so fast.
Yeah.
I want to say 2022, 2023, that time frame. And we started exploring how can we use these chatbots and large language models to support our work. And so one of our first publications was about how we could use the large language models, specifically ChatGPT, to develop interview protocols. And how might we go about um, leveraging that to help us refine before we're in the situation of interviewing people and having to make changes on the fly. Not that that might not happen still, but maybe we could minimize some of that. And from there, then we started to look at, okay, so based on these tools or our protocols, what recommendations do we have? So then we provided some model recommendations for using AI for that, generative AI specifically for that type of work. Um, Another project that we worked on was, in many ways, it was a community-based participatory action research with some Ph.D. students. And we wanted to see how, in using AI in our teaching, how does that influence how students, doctoral students in particular, could become more critical of their writing. And so we went through and I had the pleasure of analyzing that data, and then working with the students and making sure that we had things right and along those lines. But it was really interesting to, and I think we're going to mention this later, so that's why I want to talk about this, is that they became more critical quicker. It was automatically just a place for them to go. And this is largely in part to Dr. Jessica Parker and her design of the class and how she prompted them to use, you know, there's a lot of differing opinions when we're talking about AI. And so, and her staff or her faculty at the time were really questioning using AI in the classroom. And so this really helped to, I think, bridge that, hey, we can use this in a critical way, foster problem solving, foster reflective and reflexive thinking, be it with writing or research. And so that's a little bit about where I've been. How about you, Carlene?
Oh, that is so exciting. I've mainly used AI to support reflexive thematic analysis, and particularly when comparing AI-assisted approaches with human-led, traditional RTA. And then, interestingly, I've also experimented with asking AI to generate its own reflexive statement as
Mm,
a way to examine transparency within its analytic process. So I found it pretty surprising that it was pretty forthcoming about its limitations, and it noted that it lacks lived experience. It can't interpret meaning in the way a human researcher can. So, really, throughout, this is so new for all of us. I think everyone's work is limited, to date. But I've really tried to keep, obviously, the human component at the forefront and as the primary interpreter of the work. But excitingly, Dr. Lehman and I are currently developing a methodological study that explores the role of AI within reflexive thematic analysis. So we're really excited
interesting.
about that.
Yeah.
And how that'll, perhaps provide a deeper understanding of how these tools might function within qualitative research. But as we were kind of talking about earlier, in my view, AI doesn't appear to be going anywhere anytime soon. So it really makes talks like this so important for all of us as qualitative researchers to understand how it's currently being used and how it may be used in the future. And so, with that awareness, the goal really for today and hopefully moving forward is to work together collaboratively to ensure that any integration of AI remains ethical, transparent, and really grounded in the values of qualitative inquiry. So, yeah, so excitingly, um, we get to discuss all this, and Dr. Lehman can't be here with us today. She has a busy schedule and she's in a proposal, I believe, right now. And so, but she helped us generate some questions with the use of AI to kind of help guide our talk today. And so the first one is how do we ensure meaningful human involvement remains essential throughout the analysis process, even when using AI tools? So, what would you say to that, Veronica?
Wow. I don't know. I don't know how we ensure that that happens. I think that um, we hope that that would happen, and I guess kind of like a Michael Jackson song. It starts with the person in the mirror, right? How am I doing my work? And based on how I have implemented AI tools, I I I guess I'm a control freak because I don't want to give up full control. I want to be a part of it, and I guess that stems from uh, my training with Maria and knowing that I'm supposed to be involved, right? And I matter.
Yeah.
I can't um, I can't let data stand on its own. That doesn't work. Because then where's the interpretation, where's the analysis, that sort of thing. And so I would say I don't know how we can ensure that others are doing this, but we can certainly provide guidelines and processes to hope that people follow. But then there's this other side to it. I think that, you know, speaking of small Q and big Q, qualitative research, and knowing the difference between that, the small Q is more regulated, if you will, more, I don't want to say systematic, but more regimented in terms of requirements and very trying to align with that quantitative realm, if you will, still kind of fitting into that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we just need to be aware of that. And then there's the big Q that's more open. And so I do think that as this uh, current wave continues, I would hope that we would stay open to how is it that we engage with these tools, and there's not just one way.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
for you? What would you say to that?
Oh gosh, I agree that, I don't know that you can ensure that everybody does it. You're only responsible for yourself and your research, but obviously, human involvement will always remain essential in my mind throughout the qualitative research process, even when AI tools are incorporated.
Yeah.
So, and I have noticed, and I'm sure many, if not all of you, have noticed that journals are now requiring, explicit transparency regarding the use of AI in research and really emphasizing that the human researcher is ultimately responsible for the study, its analysis, the dissemination of results as it should be. So, AI can't assume responsibility or accountability. So I agree that human engagement is paramount and that AI should be understood as a tool among many within the qualitative researcher's toolkit. But to ensure that, I don't know that that's probably possible.
Yeah. So do you think that there are any parts that would remain solely the human side?
Oh gosh, I was really thinking about that, and AI can help with literature reviews and assisting in writing and doing the analysis, but I was thinking I don't know how the data collection, there's just that really special human connection when you're conducting interviews and doing observations and field work that I would hope that that would stay solely human. I don't know how AI would be incorporated to solely be responsible for that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that that's what drew me into qualitative research to begin with, is
Yeah.
that human side of it, and where we aren't, well, we need both sides. We need the numeric side and we need the um, more collaborative side with our participants.
Mhm.
But I totally, I'm over here on the qual side. But yeah, I don't think that it would take the place of that at all, or even I don't know how it would meld in with it even, other
Yeah,
than other than what it's already doing in terms of like transcriptions and things like that. Which, by
right.
the way, um, I've been talking with people about this. The transcriptions, I find a lot of my clients that I work with, they don't go through and clean up the transcriptions at all. And I find that that's very interesting because the transcriptions are interpreting the meaning, it's putting punctuation in,
Hmm.
but we don't think of that as AI.
Yeah, I guess that is so true. Yeah.
And so it's I always find it interesting because I'll go into someone's transcript and I'm like, gosh, I'm going to need to go through this to make sense of what's going on here and have to listen and look at what's going on in terms of meaning for me. And
Yeah.
so I think that there are some ways that AI is already intuited itself, if you will, in our
Mhm.
processes, but we don't look at it in that way. And
Yeah.
I think we need to just be more aware of how those, just, just for example, the transcriptions
Hmm.
influence what we're gathering from that data.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And that's a debate in and of itself, whether to leave, the transcripts verbatim or to clean them up and take out filler
Or
words.
perhaps just to listen.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and to try to make sense of things, especially I didn't realize until I did qualitative research that we don't really speak in complete sentences. So when you read that first transcription, it's like, oh my. There has to be a lot of interpretation just even in the back and forth. So, uh,
Yeah, and I believe it's Vanover Mijas, and Saldana's text. Yeah, yeah. There's a whole chapter about transcriptions,
uh-huh.
transcription as a form of qualitative inquiry.
Oh,
And
I love it.
it's chapter 4, and it is fantastic. It's about um how we in some ways maybe manipulate the transcriptions to represent the meaning that we're getting from the words and from their voice.
Yeah.
And I did something similar in my dissertation work. So I really found that chapter really beneficial, just in terms of the transcripts in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting that we don't consider the transcription AI, but it is computer assisted.
Yeah.
So, but circling back to, obviously I would not want the data collection process to be anything other than human, but I also wonder if it could be argued that some participants may feel a greater freedom with maybe non-human involvement if there was sensitive topics involved, if they felt like they would be judged. So, could AI mediated approaches reduce concern for certain individuals? I don't know. Obviously, human oversight and ethical responsibility remains at the forefront, but it's an interesting thought.
Oh, I love that. Um, I think that it could work both ways,
Hmm.
right? It could maybe cause someone to feel more at ease.
Hmm.
And then on the other side, it'd be like, nope, not talking to this person, this thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I, it was during my time at UNC, and it was before like email interviews were very, popular. It wasn't really a thing that you could do an email interview or even an open-ended questionnaire interview or survey interview, right?
Hmm.
Very uh, it wasn't talked a lot about. And I remember interviewing the participants at one point and then emailing them because of time factors. And some people who were shorter on their interview were longer on their email interview. And
Interesting.
I found that that was so interesting. And it makes sense because some people like that time to think
Hmm.
and to ponder what their answer might be. And so I
Yeah,
think in all of this, perhaps it all has its place.
true.
And it depends on the participants and us.
Yeah,
Make sure
yeah,
that people are in an environment that they're comfortable with.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
engaging in ways that they're comfortable with.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I remember working with a one of my students actually, and she was exploring how death is treated in um, a retirement facility,
Hmm.
and or not retirement, but long-term illness facility.
Hmm.
And she had them engaging in art as she was talking, and it was fantastic. They were all um, engaged in the process itself
Hmm.
and in talking. And it was just so, I really felt honored to be on the other side of it, kind of listening what was all going on. And I think that this happens in like charlas and other testimonials and other methods that we have in qualitative research. But, you know, she had the video, she had all this other stuff. And so we've always been engaging in some way with technology.
Yeah,
So perhaps it goes back to us again in how are we going to use this in an ethical and responsive way.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So, with that in mind, how do you envision the role of the qualitative researcher transforming in the next few years due to the impacts of AI?
I think we get critical quicker. And that's what I've learned in my practice right now. I mean, I get to asking these hard questions, going, wait a minute, what's going on here? And it's quicker in terms of getting me to the interpretation and asking the harder questions, recognizing when something is missing and I need to go back.
Hmm.
Um, for me, that's what's happening is it seems like I'm just getting there quicker. It doesn't mean that the process is shorter though. This is the thing. I don't think the process is any shorter per se. It's just a matter of how I get to each point.
Hmm.
And it actually, I like the reason why I like qualitative research is because it makes me think in different ways.
Hmm.
And I think with AI and generative AI, large language models, it just helps me get to that space sooner rather than just labeling.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree, and for me, if it could support, specific tasks so that you can maybe focus on other pieces of the research process, I think that, that perhaps could be a really positive thing. So I know there are, different tools for helping find literature like Research Rabbit and oh gosh, there's a few of them, Elicit, connected papers. So to help connect you with the materials you need quicker, I think is super helpful. So maybe you can focus more on that data collection and doing photo elicitation or maybe deeper dives on your interviews. Is just a thought. But I was thinking, obviously it's changing so fast, we have no idea, how it's going to impact future research. But I see many, many benefits of it being used in traditional qualitative research in academia and and such. But I was thinking, how will it affect marketing research, UX research? You know, I could see it becoming more of a primary tool for data collection, maybe in those industries. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if this is going to speak directly to this, but I put this down as one of the things that I wanted to talk about. And I think what's happening for some people is they think it's a shortcut.
Mm,
I don't see it as a shortcut. This is not about making qualitative research be quantitative research and that we get an answer spit out of a computer or a chat bot. That's not it. I
mm,
think um, what we also have to consider is the data. The data matter.
mhm.
And if I've got very literal data, guess what my findings are? Very literal.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about that. The data matter. And so it kind of goes back to what you were saying about data collection being that linchpin, if you will,
Mhm.
because if I'm not going deeper into my conversations with people or into my observations or into my the type of documents or materials that I'm using, then I could use Word. I could do a word search in Word. I could use Excel and do filters because it's very straightforward. That's
Right.
very different than having a chatbot do the interpretation. And as a matter of fact, the interpretation that I've been, ex I guess, experimenting with and trying to understand what's going on is that it's me guiding it, me being critical and going, no, that's not it. That's not what I wanted. I
Hmm.
wanted X. Here's an example of
Yeah.
what I'm talking about here. Now
Yeah.
take that and go. And so I think it requires us to learn more about the models, to understand the data that we have just in
Hmm.
terms of depth,
Hmm.
and then go from there in terms of how are we going about our analysis.
Yeah. 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 And what specific analysis you're conducting. Yeah. So, in my experience with the reflexive thematic analysis, I did my analysis first. So I didn't want my thought process to be tainted by anything that AI came up with. So I did my analysis, came up with my codes, my themes, and then interestingly, AI just really confirmed it. So it wasn't too far off from um, what I had concluded as well. So, but that could be different if you're looking at doing photo elicitation, like you're talking with having your participants do paintings. That's a whole different set of interpretation. That's so much deeper and more contextual. And I don't know that AI has the capability to even touch that. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. But I want to go back just a moment on your analyses.
Mhm.
I would imagine, Carlene, that your prompting was very good.
Yeah, I was pretty methodical. Yes.
And that is why things ended up the way they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Prompting
and
is key.
in some ways that is our bias too,
Yes. Yes.
right? But,
Hmm.
especially in reflexivity, I have to be aware of that bias,
Uh-huh.
and I have to acknowledge when I might be intuiting a little bit too much of my background.
Hmm.
Even though that matters, I want to be aware of it, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And so I'm thinking that that's the reason why it ended up being so comparable is because your prompting was very good. Um, and you probably made adaptations as you went in terms of, did you or no? Was it?
I didn't a whole lot because I was nervous to mess with it too much. But I was also methodical about how I wanted the themes presented. Like I wanted to know how many codes,
Hmm.
were associated with each theme, and I wanted each theme supported by, data. What the other finding was that obviously the human-led, the supporting data was very rich and very contextual. And with the AI assisted, um, the supporting data was very minimal, like one sentence. So obviously, in my experience, human-led analysis won hands down, but it was nice to have almost a second set of eyes, giving you a little bit of feedback as well.
Yeah, I think it can actually be used in a couple of different ways. In the beginning, here's my prompting, and here's
Yeah.
what I'm looking for.
Mhm.
What do you see? Just to give me perhaps my initial coding structure.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then, but I was also just working with another person, and the what happened with the chatbot was that it organized everything according to the protocol. So according to the interview questions and answers. That's very limiting, and we have to be aware
Yeah.
of that. Is
Hmm.
because it's based on the question. It's about the answer. It's not always about the question, because sometimes people go off
Yeah.
and start answering other things, right?
Right.
So I think that um, that is, when we're using it at the beginning, we have to be careful with that and having it be too narrow.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, the large language models are designed to find patterns. So why wouldn't we want to use them in this way? It's just a matter of being in the loop constantly, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I mentioned bias a little bit. You want to transition to the bias area, and
Yeah.
so so it says our question is, given that AI models are imbued with the biases of their creators and the data in which they are trained on, how do you address the potential biases in AI generated qualitative findings?
Yeah, and I think that's such a fair question, and we had visited just before we started recording a little bit about this, that whether it's AI generated bias or human bias is all around us. It doesn't matter if it's quantitative, we all have bias, and so really it's acknowledging that. And so I thought it was so interesting, having AI do the reflexive
Yeah.
statement. And it was actually a pretty extensive statement. And it indicated that I am just a tool.
Mm.
I don't have life experience to be able to contextualize. And so I think just being so transparent about the bias is key, because I don't know that it can be controlled. It can only be acknowledged. You know, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's interesting that well, first of all, I think it's interesting that that you asked that question of the chatbot. I think it's just totally awesome, and I want to see it. I want to see your prompt. I want to see what it said, because it's just so interesting. I think we should demand that of ourselves as well.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
I know that, there's been a lot of talk about reflexivity, especially since Brown and Clark's book kind of really solidified this idea of reflexivity in terms of thematic analysis. And they're really trying to distinguish reflexive thematic analysis apart from the other thematic analyses that are out there. But I find that in a lot of work, and in a lot of dissertation work, doctoral work, it's not there. We
Mm.
do not have our students be reflexive throughout the process,
Hmm.
by and large.
Yeah.
So I think that we could do better with that. I
Yeah.
also think that our journals are prioritizing things that are not necessarily related to the reflexivity.
Hmm.
Like we always say, oh, you need to be reflexive, you're biased, or you're this, or you're that. But then what's cut from an article? A
Yeah.
lot of times, what's cut from the article is methodological information, the parts that are a part of our reflexivity, a part of where we're going and why we're where we are. So I think that um, yes, we need to be accountable. We need to know what the machines are trained on. We
Hmm.
need to know. We need to educate ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, I I'm actually there's a free, let me see if I can pull it up. It's called getcertificate.online. There's AI for work and life. It's from the University of North Florida,
Okay.
and they are offering a certificate for AI to get a base of understanding.
Hmm.
And it's free right now till the end of the year. So I say that if you're
Wow.
going in this direction, go get this certificate. And I don't have anything to do with them. I'm
Yeah.
just I'm just doing it myself to train myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's super, super interesting stuff that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I think that as we're going in, we need to be, um, it's much like if I'm using reflexive thematic analysis, I better know who Brown and Clark are,
Yes.
right? Um,
Yes.
and if I'm doing narrative research, Clendenin and Conley or Kuhn,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
the scholar, who are the scholars I should be
Yeah.
citing, and
Yeah.
why am I citing? It's kind of the same thing. I think
Yeah.
again, we have to be in this loop of coming to know. Maria's book, I think, is a perfect example of this idea of becoming
Hmm.
and continually on this. It's a continuum of
Hmm.
becoming, and
Yeah.
um, and I think that that's where we all need to be aiming for is who do I want to be as a researcher, and
Hmm.
and how do I continually come to that and get there, um,
Yeah.
if I ever can get there
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And she talks so much about being culturally responsive. And that, I mean, this is a piece of that.
Yeah,
AI is becoming part of our culture, and we need to be culturally responsive and ethically responsible in moving forward with our use of it. So I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, and I also think the ethics come into play in terms of how are the data being used? Are we
Yes.
allowing the data to be used to train the models? Are we using a closed model
Right. Right.
instead of an open model? If
Hmm.
I'm using an open model, do I turn off the controls? Do I turn off the
Right.
training piece? This is
Right.
the things that I feel like I learn something new every day about a tool that I've been using, and I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like this will need to be integrated into our institutional review boards too. What are the guidelines that they're going to institute for the use of data, in
Absolutely.
research.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean we're just at the beginning of this, and this is new for and it's almost like we're all drinking from a fire hose, just trying to get our arms around it. But that's why these discussions are so important, so that we can collaborate and what should the guidelines look like, to protect participants and be responsible with their data and with the information that they've entrusted us with.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to that, right? I don't think that we actually consulted with our participants enough, even in the past, even without AI.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to be storing your data on this device on Dropbox or on here on my
Yeah.
OneDrive.
Hmm.
How often do we have that actual clear statement? Um,
Yeah.
maybe in our dissertation work because we have to, and then from
Hmm.
there, it it seems like the parameters open up a bit more.
Hmm.
And so no, I think that's a great a great thing to be thinking about. And I agree. Well, and look at how IRB has changed their processes over time. I can remember some universities taking 2 months to get back to us. And then now it's just checking boxes and doing different things like that. And so I do think that they're going to have to make some changes in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, we've talked a lot about transparency. What level of transparency do you feel is necessary regarding how AI tools generate their outputs for findings for them to be considered trustworthy in academic or professional context?
Well, if I'm being honest, I guess I have to think about what my job is as a researcher. And for me, if I'm planning on publishing, I think I need to provide my prompts.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I think I need to provide a little bit of my output to show the impact and how I have changed things. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess the reason why I think that is because um, I always look about who's coming behind me to
Mm-hmm.
learn from this and how can we go further. We can't go
Right,
further if we don't know what is.
right, right.
Um, and maybe I'm not saying this right. I just think that kind of going back to the articles, some of what I want, I'm like, I want to know more about that methodological piece, right? And we don't
Right.
always see those articles. It's getting better now, but it's still, I
Yeah.
think that it would be really easy not to provide our prompting. And I
Right.
think that's part of our transparency. I think that's part of our trustworthiness.
Hmm.
And it's how we learn to get better and how
Hmm.
we help other people be better.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that, just that transparency, just enhances trustworthiness in general. But like you're talking, transferability, if people want to do something like you're doing, the more transparent you can be to help them, to provide that scaffolding, the better. And to me, at every stage, if you've used it for study conceptualization, if you've used it to help prepare the data, obviously coding analysis and interpretation, but I agree that, sharing your prompts, that's huge because prompting is so vital for a prompt-based platform.
Yes.
So,
And I think if I'm being honest, we didn't do that before with our analysis. I mean, let's be real. I
yeah.
mean, our brain is working faster and going in all these different directions. I mean, if we take a look at Brown and Clark's thematic analysis, the reflexive thematic analysis, or even Johnny Saldana's paradigm, he has like a three-step paradigm for analysis. If I
Hmm.
look at those, I do every step, but I don't do it in a linear way.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
brain is going, like the minute I start seeing something's connected, I start subcoding, if you will,
Yeah.
or patterning.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that as I go. One
Hmm.
of the things that we can't expect an AI to do right now, a generative AI chatbot, is to do that.
Hmm.
You have to go step by step.
Hmm.
So in some ways, that slows us down a little bit in terms of how we do it in our brain.
Hmm.
At least I'm speaking purely from my crazy brain right now. So, but nothing is linear for me. And then after my first go round, even though I've been patterning as I go, when I go back through and cross check, I realize that I've made some mistakes. Nothing
Yeah.
is different in terms of using a chatbot and
Yeah.
using a large language model. I have to go back and I have to check. This is part of my processes, but we don't say that enough.
Right.
We
Right.
don't give that out to our readers so that they know that this is not something just anybody can do in a short amount of time.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's that shortcut that I talked about before. And then I also want to say, because you kind of mentioned this, repl rep replication in terms of our findings is not our goal.
That's true. That is true.
Replication perhaps in terms of our processes.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Yes. In terms of the process. Yes.
yeah. And I think that that's a big distinction,
Yes.
um, because it's not like quantitative in that way for me. And I
No,
maybe I'm missing it.
no, I agree.
But I hear that a lot, like, oh, well, someone, I have a different interpretation. Cool, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me how you got there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we can be reflexive about, well, what is it about our background that we're interpreting things differently?
Yeah.
Um, my background is in literacy. So I think this goes back to transactional reader theory
Hmm.
in terms of when we go into something, we're one person. And after we've gone through that book, that movie, that data, we are now different.
Yeah.
And that difference is how we then go back and interpret things differently as we go back through the second round.
Yeah.
I think this is what too is not talked about in our processes, but I think it's important for us to talk about here because I don't want that. I don't want the chatbot to take that away from me.
Right.
I still want to be in that data.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to be.
Yeah,
You're central.
yeah, absolutely. So are you okay if we go back to the your experience with the specific AI tools?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What would you like to know?
Tell me how like your AI thematic analysis features, anything like that? Like what tools are you aligning with? Which tools um are you into, I guess, would be a way to say.
Oh, so looking at the application and tools that I used.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, well, specific to my dissertation, I primarily used the paid platform of ChatGPT. But in other experiences, I have worked with ResearchRabbit to gather data. I've worked with Elicit. I would never recommend a literature review with ChatGPT. It doesn't seem to be
It
too
doesn't work.
no, that is not a good idea whatsoever. But
No.
um, anyway, but as far as using ChatGPT for the analysis, what I did was I used two separate sets of prompts. And so I used one set of prompts from Brown and Clark. Directly from their textbook. And then Zhang et al., I don't know if you've read any of their work, but they've been doing a lot of work with using AI and qualitative research. And so they've done a lot of really, groundbreaking work, in my opinion. And so I used their set of prompts that they had used in one of their research studies. And so it was interesting. There was a difference. So, like we're talking, prompting is just tremendously huge. And I think that, there probably if people are going to use AI in this way, there needs to be training in how to maybe do that as effectively as possible. So, and I used in vivo one time their AI, and that was pretty interesting too. It was pretty granular, I thought. But as far as like note taking using Firefly's Fathom or productivity, I know people have used Trello, Notion, things like that. And I'll include all of this uh, in a post on the group so that everybody can get this information. I haven't used that. So primarily mine have been, Grammarly, ChatGPT, and then Elicit Research Rabbit. Have you had any experiences with other applications and tools that are helpful?
I just signed up for the very expensive ChatGPT version,
Okay,
search version.
nice.
It's $200 a month. I'm only going to be on it for 2 months at most because uh, yeah, but I just wanted to see what it does differently and I just I just got into it, so I can't speak to it, but I want people to know that it's out there. And
Okay.
speaking of this, I do think that the cost behind these systems are important to talk about,
Hmm.
and it goes back to some equity pieces,
Hmm.
qualitative research. We have qualitative data analysis software programs that are um, very expensive, and then some that are free. And
Hmm.
so I think that that's another thing that we need to be considering is the access that people have in terms of there's no way I'm going to be able to afford this more than 2 months, but
Yeah.
it's perhaps the most advanced tool that we have at this point.
Yeah.
And so when does that mellow out, right?
Mhm.
When
Right.
and is it still going to be the haves and the have-nots in terms of
Oh,
that?
yeah.
I think that that's a problematic
Hmm.
aspect of, the qualitative software programs in general, and
Hmm.
now AI is in there too.
Yeah. And we were hoping that it would level the playing field,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, we're kind of winding down
Yeah.
the hour and we have more to talk about, so we could almost do a whole nother segment, but I wanted to open it up to questions if anybody has questions for us. Dr. Morgan, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add. I really wanted to listen and learn, and it's really been a great conversation. Uh, I think the one thing that's sticking in my mind right now is the idea of including your prompts in your publications. It doesn't have to be every single thing because as I get deeper into the data, I have lots of exchanges with the AI. And that could, that fills up several pages when I download it. But from there, you can still condense the core sets of prompts that really help people see the way you're getting from one step to the next.
Hmm.
And I think also that really helps for like you're saying, the readers and the next generation, let alone the reviewers, so that people can see what effective prompting looks like. I mean, I've seen some bad prompting. I don't uh, one of my colleagues, Suzanne Fries, just
Free?
wrote a
Yeah.
little piece in her blurb about tearing apart one person's prompting. And I try not to be so negative, but it could be done.
Yeah, I think that there's, that's, gosh, I think we could probably do that in terms of analysis. If I went back and looked at my pre-dissertation work and my dissertation work, I might be, well, my goodness, what was I doing? But yeah, it does open it up for critique, but perhaps that's not such a bad thing. I was just reading Suzanne's blog post on the Frankenstein, going back to that
Yeah, that's what
Frankenstein
I was
article.
thinking of. That's the one.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't remember. The first author is Towsey,
Yes.
Towsey, and
I'm gonna drop this
Frankenstein.
in. I'll drop it in the chat for other people because I do think it's important for us to be thinking about.
Hmm. Yeah, so they just crammed a whole lot of reflexive thematic analysis in one prompt without any context. And Suzanne's point is that's just not going to work. And also, you really, I think, Carlene, you probably experienced that in your reflective thematic analysis. You really have to think about how you're going to translate that into an AI framework.
Yes.
Um, you can't just take six little sentences that each summarize one phase of reflexive thematic analysis and pop that into one prompt and expect anything to happen. So, uh, the more we can share and show, then the easier that's going to make all our lives.
Yeah. I agree. I was also thinking we had a question about the black box problem, where when using AI for interpretive studies. And I want to get both of your thoughts on this. And if anybody else has thoughts on this, please share. But I was thinking, with me asking the AI to provide a reflexive thematic statement, could you also ask it to indicate how it makes its decisions in the interpretive studies?
Hmm. So I haven't tried that.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's also a way to say uh, what was confusing in my own prompts to the chat,
Oh,
to
yeah.
kind of get that feedback so that I can be better at what I'm doing in terms of my prompting, because our language matters.
Yes.
And I could be making some assumptions in my prompts that the tool knows what I'm talking about, for example. And that could
Mhm.
be a bad assumption to make. I'm sure I've done it.
I really like that idea. What do you think, Dr. Morgan?
Well, one of the things I recommend is giving the machine, if you will, a persona. So to say you are a qualitative researcher, your particular background is in, let's take what Veronica said earlier with a particular variety of educational analysis, and then ask it, what would be some of the core concepts that you would use as a specialist in this area. So you can spend a fair amount of time querying the bot about, the positionality you would like to give it. I mean, I
Mm,
don't mean checking a bunch of identity boxes, but saying, you're coming from this perspective. If you were coming from this perspective, what would you apply to the data?
mm,
And so I like to do that to sort of, and then to, say, well, what about? And, not just accept what it says and then say, again, dialogue with assumptions that are in the machine.
Hmm.
So that's one thing I do.
yeah, I really like that. I really like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I kind of learned it from an article I didn't like, where they just said, they just went into their area of interest and then said, well, this machine is biased because what we're really pursue is a much newer line of research, and it seems to be attached to an older line of research. So I'm thinking, well, why didn't you tell it you wanted it to be an expert in this newer line of research and then see what it would say? Certainly all that is in there, as is the larger database that's frustrating you. So get it to test out its ability to be the kind of analyst you want it to be.
Yeah. I,
Yeah,
I I think that's so important. So, what are your thoughts on, bringing that all together, for qualitative researchers to kind of have that scaffolding, that protocol that they can be helpful if they choose to utilize AI in their research.
Well, Veronica, do you have a response to that?
I think that we have, I think it's important for us not to be afraid and to give things a go, knowing that we're still becoming, if you will. I'll go back to Maria's language there, but it's true. We're still trying to understand, and we will be for a while. But it's not going to go away. I don't see it going away.
Yeah.
But being okay with getting it wrong. And is it, I try to tell the people that I work with, it's not about right or wrong, it's about what's appropriate. And what is most appropriate as we're going through the data? What's the most logical process that we want to go, where do we want to go based on our research aims, the data matter, and understanding how that, though, it's almost like dynamic visual that has lines going everywhere, and how everything's functioning together, and how do we get that to um, produce what we envision and what we're understanding the data to be. And because I think that's, again, it's going back to me as a researcher, and that's what I love about qualitative research, because I matter.
Yeah.
Every qualitative researcher matters. And so to keep us in that position, I guess that would be my big thing, and to not be afraid.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And do you have any thoughts, Dr. Morgan?
Well, I would just reinforce what Veronica said. It's being appropriate, and that means being appropriate for you and appropriate to your responsibility to the data and your participants. Um, but anybody who thinks that a chatbot is going to do their analysis for them hasn't really dug very deeply into the reality of AI or to the power of it. It can give you a lot of starting places and things to think about, but you're going to have to really work with the data using that tool. So I guess
Mhm.
the word tool has gone by a few times, and I really do emphasize when I'm talking to people, it's a tool and it's a very powerful tool, but it's a tool you have to learn how to use. So that's, yeah,
Oh, David, thank you for saying that, because you reminded me of something, and that's in terms of the type of analysis. So inductive versus deductive versus abductive. And when we are going into our data in a deductive way, that biases us for our inductive process, and vice versa. And I don't see this as any different. But we have to be aware of it, and we have to acknowledge that what we're doing in our thought processes matters to what we come out with in terms of analysis and our findings.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here today. And I so appreciate Dr. Morgan. Thank you for your input.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Richard, thank you so much for all your insight. And I will share a post with some of the AI research tools. And if anybody has questions for anyone here, please post it in the qualitative research group and we'll address those there. But thank you all so much. And Dr. Morgan, it's been a pleasure having you here. Sam, Danida, and Saeed, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Carlene, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
yeah.
Bye.